All right, strap yourselves in because today we're diving headfirst into some seriously heavy stuff. We're talking about the scariest prophecies for the book of Revelation.
Ooh, yeah, those are some intense ones.
We're going to try to break down 10 of the most chilling predictions, see what the symbolism could mean, and look for connections to events throughout history and even in our world right now.
You know, it's really interesting how these prophecies, while often taken literally, can also be seen as powerful metaphors for the struggles we all face. I mean, both personally and as a society, you know.
Yeah, totally. Like they're tapping into those deep-seated fears and anxieties we all have, right?
Exactly. And by exploring them, I think we can gain a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
Okay, so let's just jump right in with one of the most well-known and, let's be honest, terrifying images from Revelation. The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse.
Right.
Conquest, war, famine, and death. Each riding a horse of a different color. You can't deny it's an image designed to make you stop and pay attention.
Absolutely. And each horseman and the color of their steed carries a specific meaning. Like, the white horse, representing conquest, isn't just about military victories. It's more about the spread of ideologies, you know, the forceful imposition of beliefs and the chaos and despair that comes with that. Think of it like the seductive allure of power, how it can twist even the best intentions.
So it's not just armies taking over land, it's ideas taking over minds.
Right.
That's a scary thought.
It is. And then there's the red horse, symbolizing war. But this goes beyond just traditional warfare. This is about society breaking down.
Yeah.
The scarcity of resources, the kind of conflict that comes up when people are desperate and fighting just to survive. And we see this echoed all throughout history and even today in places where resources are stretched thin and tensions are running high.
Yeah, for sure. It's a reminder of just how fragile civilization can be, you know, like how quickly things can fall apart.
Exactly. And the black horse, the one representing famine, speaks to the devastation caused by things like disease, economic collapse, and just a lack of basic necessities. It's a scary reminder of how interconnected our systems are and how vulnerable we are to disruption. Think about pandemics that have just ravaged humanity throughout history, or those economic crises that have brought entire nations to their knees.
Okay, so we've got conquest, war, and famine. What's the final horseman bringing to this apocalyptic party?
Well, riding the pale horse is none other than death itself. And this represents the ultimate consequence of all those forces, the collapse of life as we know it.
So it's not just about individuals dying, it's about the death of entire systems, the death of the world as we know it.
That's right. It's a stark reminder that human existence is fragile and that there are forces out there that are beyond our control. But on the other hand, it's also a call to action. It reminds us to appreciate life's preciousness and strive to create a world where these forces don't win in the end.
Okay, wow. Those four really set the stage. So let's move on to prophecy number 2. The Great Tribulation. This is described as a period of intense suffering and persecution, the kind that would test the faith of even the most devout.
Yeah, Jesus himself actually warned about this time. He really emphasized that the challenges to come would be unlike anything we'd ever seen before. Some scholars even believe he might have been talking about the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem back in 70 AD, which was absolutely devastating for the Jewish people.
That's right. And our source points out the passage where Jesus says that if those days weren't cut short, no one would survive. But then he also mentions the elect, those who will be saved. What do you think about that?
Well, the idea of the elect has been interpreted in so many different ways throughout history. Some people believe it refers to a very specific group chosen by God for salvation, while others think it's a more universal message of hope, you know?
Yeah.
That even in the absolute darkest times, those who hold on to their faith, those who stay strong in their beliefs, will find a way through.
It makes me think about people who have faced persecution throughout history, and even today. Their stories of resilience, their faith in the face of unimaginable hardship. It really resonates with this prophecy.
Absolutely. And their experiences serve as this powerful reminder that even when things seem hopeless, faith and hope can endure.
Okay, so we've got conquest, war, famine, death, and then this intense period of tribulation. I'm almost scared to ask, but what could possibly come next?
All right, well, get ready because prophecy number 3 is the 7 bowls of God's wrath. And each bowl unleashes a plague of increasing intensity, building up to this catastrophic upheaval of the natural world. It's one of the most vivid and terrifying depictions of divine judgment in the entire book of Revelation.
Okay, so our source really goes into detail about each bowl. We've got painful sores, blood-filled waters, scorching heat, darkness everywhere, a dried-up river, and then it all culminates in this massive earthquake and hailstorm. It's a lot. It's a pretty bleak picture, isn't it?
It is, but I think it's important to remember that even in the middle of these really terrifying events, Revelation still offers a glimmer of hope. Those who turn to God, who find refuge in faith, can find mercy, and maybe even escape the full force of his wrath.
So even when faced with divine judgment, there's still a chance for redemption.
Exactly. And that's actually a key theme throughout Revelation. Even in the midst of judgment, God's love and mercy are still there.
Okay, well, that's a little reassuring at least. Let's move on to prophecy number 4, the one that always gets people talking. The mark of the beast.
Right.
This isn't just about a physical mark, though, right?
No, it's much bigger than that. The mark is described as this declaration of allegiance to the Antichrist, a symbol of choosing to side with the forces of evil. It's a powerful image that really makes you think about things like conformity, free will, and the consequences of the choices we make.
Our source points out that the mark is connected to buying and selling, which suggests that those who refuse to take it will be totally excluded from society. It's a chilling thought, especially in our world today where technology is such a huge part of our lives and everything's so interconnected.
Yeah, it really is. It makes you think about how systems of control could be used and the dangers of giving up our individual autonomy. And it pushes us to think about what we would be willing to sacrifice for what we believe in, for what we know is right, even when there's a ton of pressure to conform.
That's a really good point. And then there's that warning in Revelation, the one that says those who bear the mark will be eternally damned.
Mm-hmm.
It really drives home the seriousness of the choices we make and how they can have eternal consequences.
It definitely raises the stakes.
It does. Okay, prophecy number 5 introduces the beast and the false prophet.
Ooh.
These two figures seem to embody deception and evil in their purest forms.
They really do. The beast, with that infamous number 666, represents rebellion against divine authority, the pursuit of power and control no matter the cost.
And our source describes this beast as having immense power, the ability to manipulate entire nations and just force its will on the world. It paints this scary picture of tyranny and oppression.
It does. And then we have the false prophet, who uses miracles and signs to deceive people into worshiping the beast. It's a reminder that things aren't always as they seem, that even those things that seem miraculous or supernatural can be used for really bad things.
It makes you wonder, how can people be tricked so easily? What makes them so vulnerable to that kind of manipulation?
That's a question for the ages, isn't it? I think it comes down to that deep-seated desire for meaning, for connection, for something to believe in.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when we're searching for those things, we can become easy targets for people who take advantage of our hopes and fears. It's a reminder to be discerning, to question everything, and to trust our own instincts.
Okay, so with all of this deception and manipulation going around, is there any good news?
Well, the good news is that both the beast and the false prophet are defeated in the end, which reinforces the idea that no matter how powerful evil seems, it won't win in the long run. It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope and justice will ultimately prevail.
Okay, that is good news. Now we're getting to the really epic showdown, the Battle of Armageddon. The name itself just brings to mind images of ultimate conflict and destruction.
Right. It does. Armageddon, or Harmageddo, is a real place in Israel, and it's been the site of many historical battles, but its symbolic meaning in Revelation points to the final confrontation between good and evil, the culmination of everything that's come before it.
Our source describes Jesus Christ returning to earth, leading the armies of heaven against the beast and the kings of the earth. It's an amazing image, full of power and drama.
It really is, and it's interesting because the battle isn't just fought with physical weapons. Christ's most powerful weapon is actually his word, which is symbolized by the sharp sword that comes out of his mouth. It represents truth cutting through deception, justice winning out over injustice.
I love that image of the sword, so powerful. So, good versus evil, truth versus deception. What happens in this ultimate battle?
Well, the battle ends with the complete and utter defeat of the beast's forces. And there's this really vivid description of birds feasting on the fallen, which is a stark reminder of what happens when you choose evil over good.
Wow, okay. Speaking of consequences, prophecy number 7 brings us to the destruction of Babylon, a city that's portrayed as the ultimate symbol of human corruption and rebellion against God.
Yeah, Babylon, which is often depicted as a harlot in Revelation, represents the allure of material wealth and power, and those worldly systems that stand in opposition to God's righteousness.
Our source describes Babylon as a place overrun with immorality, greed, and false worship, a city that has completely turned away from God and embraced its own selfish desires. It kind of makes you think about some of the cities today that are known for their excess and vices, doesn't it?
It does, and Babylon's destruction happens quickly and completely, which is a stark reminder of what happens when we put worldly pursuits above spiritual values. The text even emphasizes how the kings, merchants, and seafarers of the earth mourn Babylon's destruction, not because they care about justice, but because they can't profit from her riches anymore. It's a pretty scathing critique of greed and materialism.
It's like they're saying, hey, you can't take it with you.
Exactly. It challenges us to consider our own values, what we truly prioritize in life, and what kind of foundations we're building for ourselves. Are we basing our lives on things that will eventually disappear, or are we striving for something more lasting, something truly meaningful?
That's a question we should all be asking ourselves. Okay, prophecy number 8 takes us to a very serious moment, the final judgment. This is it, the point when every single soul stands before God to answer for their actions.
Yeah, it's a powerful image of accountability and the ultimate expression of divine justice. Revelation emphasizes that nobody can avoid this judgment, no matter their status or power in this life.
The text describes the opening of the book of life and the consequences of having your name left out. It's a pretty sobering thought, knowing that our actions in this life have eternal consequences. It reminds me of that saying, you reap what you sow.
It does. But it's also important to remember that the final judgment isn't just about punishment. It's also about vindication for the righteous and fulfilling God's promise to make all things right.
So it's not only about punishment, but about justice being served.
Right.
That those who have been wronged will finally find peace and vindication. That's a hopeful thought.
It is. And it underscores the idea that our choices truly matter, that our actions have consequences both now and in the future.
Okay, so after all of that intensity, we shift to a much more hopeful vision with prophecy number 9, the new heaven and new earth. This is where Revelation gives us a glimpse of complete restoration, a world without sin, death, or suffering.
It's the ultimate fulfillment of God's promise to make all things new. It's a vision of paradise restored, where everything is in harmony and filled with beauty.
Our source describes it as a place of perfect beauty and harmony, with God dwelling among his people forever. It sounds idyllic. What details really stand out to you?
Well, one of the most striking images is the description of the New Jerusalem, the city of just incredible beauty, radiating with light, a place where God's presence is fully realized.
And it's not just about the physical beauty, it's what it represents, a world that's healed from all the pain and brokenness of the past. I really love that image of God wiping away every tear. It's so tender and comforting.
It is. It speaks to that universal longing we all have for a world without pain and sorrow, a world that's completely peaceful and whole.
Finally, we come to prophecy number 10, the victory of Christ over evil. It feels like the perfect way to wrap up everything we've talked about.
It does, doesn't it? It's the ultimate confirmation that good conquers evil, that light always overcomes darkness.
Our source describes Christ returning as a conquering king, leading the armies of heaven to defeat Satan and establish his eternal kingdom.
It's a powerful image of divine power and authority, this assurance that justice will ultimately prevail. And it's a call for us to hold on to hope, even when things seem their darkest, knowing that the victory has already been won.
So we've gone through 10 of the scariest prophecies in the book of Revelation. They're intense, dramatic, full of symbolism and imagery. How are we supposed to make sense of them in our daily lives?
That's a really great question. And I think it's important to keep in mind that even though these prophecies are often taken literally, they can also be understood on a deeper, more symbolic level.
So they're not just predictions of what will happen in the future, but also metaphors for the struggles we face inside ourselves and in the world around us.
Exactly. Take the Four Horsemen, for instance. They can be seen as representing forces that we all wrestle with. The desire for power, the inevitability of conflict, the fragility of the systems we rely on, and the reality of death.
And the Great Tribulation, while terrifying to think about, can also be seen as a metaphor for the trials and tribulations we all go through in life. Those times that really test our faith and resilience and push us to our limits.
Right. It's about those moments when we have to dig deep and find the strength to keep going. And the mark of the beast, with its focus on conformity and control, warns us against surrendering our individual autonomy. It challenges us to think critically, to stand up for what we believe in, even when it's hard.
It's like these prophecies are holding up a mirror to our own lives, asking us to examine our choices, our values, what we prioritize.
Exactly. They are. And they remind us that even when things are dark, there's always hope. There's always the possibility of redemption, transformation, a path that leads toward a brighter future.
It's interesting to think about these prophecies alongside what's happening in the world today. We're living in a time of so much uncertainty, division, and conflict. It's easy to feel overwhelmed and wonder if things really are as bad as they seem.
I know, it is, but I think we need to remember that while these prophecies definitely speak to the challenges we face today, they are ultimately messages of hope.
Right. They remind us that even in the middle of chaos, there's a bigger plan unfolding, a purpose beyond what we can fully grasp.
Exactly, and that's where faith comes in, right?
Yeah.
That belief that even when we can't see the way forward, there's still a guiding light out there, some force for good working in the universe.
That's a comforting thought, especially when things feel so shaky right now.
Yeah.
As we've been talking about all this, one image from our source material really stuck with me. That description of the New Jerusalem and the new heaven and new earth.
Oh, yeah. It is a truly stunning vision, isn't it? A
Yeah.
city of just incredible beauty, radiating light. It's a place where God's presence is fully realized. It's like the ultimate representation of hope, a world transformed by love and justice.
Exactly. And it's not just about how physically beautiful the city is, but what it stands for. Harmony, restoration, a world completely healed from all the pain and brokenness of the past.
Right. It speaks to that deep longing we all have, for a world where suffering doesn't exist anymore.
Yep.
A world where peace and justice are the norm, and where we're finally united with God in perfect love.
It's interesting. We started this deep dive with all these images of destruction and despair, but we're ending on a note of hope and renewal. It's like a reminder that even when things are at their darkest, there's always the potential for something better.
Yeah.
Something truly transformative.
There is. And it challenges us to hold on to that hope, to actively work towards making the world a better place that reflects those values, even if it's just in small ways in our everyday lives.
So, as we wrap up our exploration of these prophecies, what's the one big takeaway you want our listener to walk away with?
I think the most important thing to remember is that these prophecies, even though they can be pretty scary at times, are ultimately messages of hope. They remind us that even when we're surrounded by darkness, even when there's suffering and uncertainty all around us, there's a bigger plan at work, a force for good that's going to win in the end.
I love that. It's a reminder to hold on to hope, to keep fighting for what's right, to never give up on the possibility of a better future, and to remember that we're not in this alone.
Exactly. We have each other, we have our faith, and we have that promise of a future where good ultimately triumphs over evil.
I think that's a beautiful note to leave our listener on today, with a sense of hope, with that renewed commitment to seeking good, to being a light in a world that can often feel very dark. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the book of Revelation. It's been a really fascinating, thought-provoking journey.
It really is. And it reminds us that we aren't powerless, We can choose to focus on the negative, or we can choose to actively work toward creating that better future.
I like that. So after spending all this time with these pretty intense prophecies, what would you say is the most important thing for our listeners to remember?
I think it's that even though these prophecies can be kind of frightening, they ultimately point to hope. Like, they're a reminder that no matter what darkness we might be facing, there's a bigger picture, a force for good that's going to prevail in the end.
That's a powerful thought, especially in times like these. So thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the book of Revelation.
Absolutely.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It has. Always fascinating to explore these topics.
And for our listeners out there, if this deep dive sparked your curiosity, I encourage you to explore the book of Revelation for yourselves. There's so much depth and symbolism to uncover, and it's always open to interpretation. Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep that flame of hope burning bright.